Dr. Lovely, straight from the couch, y'all. Straight from the couch.
Welcome, WDAP Radio listeners. This is Dr. Lovely of Straight from the Couch with Dr. Lovely. And again, I am so honored to be here to you, our WDAP Radio listeners, as we speak life and empowerment into you. On today, I wanted to talk to you about something that we all seem to maybe struggle in and can use some advice in, and that's relationships. The Lovely Lady magazine will be having its third annual conference of the Repair 3, and it is called Repair 3, and it is time to mend the damage of the relationship. And we will be holding this conference at 11 East Utica Street on November 16th from 1 to 5. And we'll be holding this conference so that we can deal with a lot of the things that we face in relationships from time to time. And, not that all relationships fail, but some of them fail for many, many different reasons. So we're going to be attacking some of those things that may have caused us hurt, may have caused us pain, may have caused us to struggle. And we're going to come to you by way of testimony, activities, games. We're coming to you from the mental health perspective. We're coming to you from the spiritual perspective. We're coming to you from the family perspective. And we're coming to you from the natural perspective. And what we're going to hope to bring to you is an opportunity to be able to identify with those things that we struggle in with relationships and all of those things that we may need some healing from. And as we do know, relationships is not just boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. It could be families, it could be friendships, and it also could be coworkers. And if you look at the definition of what relationship is, relationships, the definition is, it is the way two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected. Again, it's not just boyfriend, girlfriend. It could be family, friends. It could be so much. But what we're looking at here is the way that things are connected. And I want to take out two very important parts of just that definition alone. And the parts that I want to zero in and talk to you on today is one, the way and the connection. As we know, some relationships, they have a tendency to fail. And not always because it is something wrong with us, but sometimes it is something wrong with it. The way that we've entered into this relationship and what we are connected to and who we are connected to in the relationship. So we must keep in mind the ways in which and who we are connected to in these relationships and as relating it to ourselves. So let's look at a typical object that has or needs a power source. If the connection between the source and the object is weak, it may not work too well at all. It brings me back to thinking about my Bluetooth speaker. I have this Bluetooth speaker, and you guys who know me, y'all know I find I try to find revelation in just about everything, and I relate those things to you so that it can come to you in a natural sense. But I had this Bluetooth speaker once, and this Bluetooth speaker or tower, something happened to my cord to it or to the adapter. So what I ended up doing is I ended up going to get another kind of adapter. Now, it did work for a little while, but there was a humming in it, and the sound kept going in and out. Obviously, it was not the right adaptation. But sometimes we in relationships, we will adapt to things that just don't fit, and therefore the connection is way off or it is weak. If I had not done my research on the adapter that I was using out of desperation. I just wanted to use it. I just needed it. I wanted the sound. So I did not do my research. So what I did is I obtained one that was not necessarily right for what I needed. So it ended up being the wrong one. And sometimes we do this in relationships. Sometimes out of desperation, out of loneliness, we don't do our research either. And we end up on the wrong jobs. We end up with frenemies instead of friendships. And we end up saying, I do, when we really don't. So This is where the pain and toxicness can begin to grow or develop in many relationships. So we'll stay in, or we'll be a part of something that we know is a problem, that we know is not right, but yet and still we continue to allow it to be a part of our lives. In so many words, we are adapting to this weak connection. We are adapting to these issues that are not right for us. So the way that we entered out of desperation is what caused this situation to become weak, or staying in it longer than necessary, because we become adapted to these issues. So that's a place in our lives where we don't want to ultimately fall into when we're dealing with relationships. So it's important that we must understand, before entering into or connecting ourselves in any type of relationship, to do our research. Number one, research yourself. Am I ready for this? Why am I doing this? Is this right for me? These are all necessary questions that we have to examine ourselves with. And we have to make sure we're not doing things out of desperation. We have to make sure we are really ready for what we are expecting others to do. And that's very, very important, because once we enter into a relationship, we can just want, and we have all these big dreams, but what are we bringing to the table? What are we able to do? This too can cause us to have a weakness in areas, because we're expecting something so great, but we're not ourselves ready to come to the table. So we too can be the weak connection and we not know it. So that's why it's important to be absolutely and positively honest with ourselves. We want a man or a woman with a 6-figure income, but we don't even have our stuff together yet. So it's just not fair to want the one person to bring it all in and we're not ready ourselves. So that's why it's important, before entering into relationships, know ourselves, examine ourselves, get ourselves together first, and do the research on you, your mental health. Are you holding anything in you from past relationships that you are going to bring to the table to the next? We cannot make the next person responsible for what the last person did. So these are all areas in which we need to know. We need to make sure, are we healed in these areas? So we just want to make sure that we do that kind of research. We have to do an inventory on ourselves before we start trying to do an inventory on anyone else. And number 2, do your research on others. What is their agenda for you? Are you headed in the same direction, or are they headed in the same direction as you? Are they weak? Are they the weak connection? So all of these things are very important, that you have to do your background check, even on those that are entering into your lives. It is not about snooping. It is not about trying to be nosy or anything like that, but it's about getting to the facts. It's about knowing what you're getting yourself. It's about doing your investigation, and and you don't have to be nosy to do it. It's just outright a bold question that we need to ask. And sometimes you can just allow things to just flow naturally, but then you have to pay attention to the signs. You have to read those signs, and those signs will begin to let you know that if people have entered into your life to use you and abuse you, or did they enter your life to enhance it? Relationships should be something equal. You don't want to get into something, and again, it's not just boyfriend, girlfriend. You don't want to enter into a job system. You don't want to enter into something that you did not do your investigation on, and then somewhere down the line you're miserable, or somewhere down the line you are upset, or you're regretting that you even made this choice. So it's important to gather all information and necessary components before you make the choice, and you must make the right choice for you. And again, don't just ignore the signs. Don't just to adapt to the red flags. Don't just adapt to the trouble and take yourself all the way down a rabbit hole and you can't get yourself out. Don't allow infatuation, power, money, prestige, or any of those things like that to steer you into making those choices, because sometimes pure infatuation can cause you a world of trouble. It makes me think about King David and Bathsheba in 2 Samuel, the 11th chapter. You can do your reading at your own time, but I'll just kind of sum it up for you a little bit. King David and Bathsheba, again, not just King David alone. You know, a lot of times we hear these readings and, you know, the guy gets all of the backlash because of whatever he was told to do. But you know what? Us women are in the background of that too, and we take just as much as responsibility for the choices and the things that we allow. So King David, he sought Bathsheba, and the scripture said that he watched from his high rise. And if you allow me, I'll just put it in the phrase of where it's more natural for us to understand. But he looked, he watched from his high rise, and he looked and he saw this beautiful woman bathing. Now, it was something that's interesting about King David in that time in the season, that they were at war, and usually the kings would be out in the field fighting, but David, for some reason, he stayed back. And that could have been his first problem that he made, because he wasn't where he was supposed to be. Sometimes if we're out of position, we can also fall into things that we should not be involved in. So again, King David, he was on his rooftop, probably enjoying where he was in life. And what King David did is he saw this beautiful woman. He saw Bathsheba, and he saw her bathing. And he inquired of her from his servants, "Who is this woman?" And, you know, he was told who this woman was. This woman was the wife of Uriah, and someone that was fighting in his army. So what David did is he summoned her to come to him. The second thing that he did wrong, this is somebody's wife, but yet he summons for her to come to him. So, you know, Bathsheba, being a woman, you know, I'm just trying to look at this in the natural and bring it up to speed to today. She probably looked at that thing and said, you know, I'm trying to imagine her and her girls. What? Girl, the king want to see you? If you don't go. You know, a lot of times you think, you know, they thinking, okay, with the king, they had to follow what the king says. But at the same time, there was power, there was prestige, and there was all kind of things that her and her girls probably was saying, girl, you better go because the king want to see you. So she got all dialed up, and she got looking her best, and she went. And some things happened between David and Bathsheba that day where she slept with him, and the scripture says that she ended up pregnant. Now, it doesn't say how many times that they probably dipped, how many times that they probably seen each other behind the back, but some months went down the line before she found out that she was even pregnant. So she came back to the king and she said, guess what? I'm pregnant. And the funny thing is her husband was fighting at war, and he was nowhere around to even touch her. So what we have here is another thing. So David says, David says he needs to get Uriah back here so that he can touch his wife. And that's the third thing. David was trying to cover up his and her sin. They was both together trying to say, well, if he just lay with me, if he just lay with her, and then I can just say that I'd be pregnant. So what this was he was supposed to continue on as being the king, impregnating the soldier's wife, and this baby being born, and he thinking it's his baby, and they was just going to continue on down the rabbit hole, like I said, as if nothing had happened. But it ain't work out like that, because David summons and got Uriah back home. And when Uriah came home, he was so dedicated about his work. He was so one-track mind on the mission. He couldn't get himself all emotionally bogged down. He refused to lay with his wife. Even after David got him there, got him juiced up, got him drunk, partied with him and everything else, but he still wouldn't lay with his wife. So his plan was backfiring. So when he went back, David then sent a message to put him on the front line because he still needed to cover up his crime. And see, this is what happens when we get ourselves involved in the wrong thing. So David and Bathsheba now with a bad connection. And again, the way that they entered into. Remember I said I wanted to talk about the way and the connection. So it could be the way that you enter into something which will ultimately make a bad connection for you. So therefore, he ended up having this man killed so that his crime can be covered up. So this man ended up dying so that he can take this woman as his wife. So his sins was not unknown because the Lord had revealed it to the prophets. His sins was not unknown. That what he did, he suffered for it because the baby was born, but the child died. David loved that child and he mourned that child. So we have to be careful at the way we enter into things, what we are connected to, and the people that we are connected to, because it's not just us that are suffering from choices that we made. Uriah's family suffered from that choice that David made. They had to mourn the loss of a son, a brother, a grandson, an uncle, a husband. They had to mourn. And not just that, Bathsheba, she was connected to that. So she had to lose a child. And also the child itself died. So our decisions, our choices, and the way that we enter into things is very, very important because we're not the only ones that is connected. So we have to be very careful that when we're making choices, and especially for the matters of our heart, that we need to make the right choices and the right decisions for the right reasons. And we need not to try to cover up our problems and just adapt to the situation. David tried to adapt to his situation by having a man killed. But that was not the right thing to do. Because ultimately, even though they said the scripture reports David as being a man after God's own heart and a blessed man, he still had to suffer the consequences of his actions. And sometimes we are the same way in relationships. So we have to, again, examine ourselves, make sure that we're doing the right things for the right reasons, and not by choosing things just because we want stature, we want power, we want authority, we want money. But we have to really evaluate life. We have to really evaluate circumstances. We have to really evaluate who is connected to me that might be affected by my choice. Is this the right thing for me? Is this the right thing for my family? Is this decision going to be the right thing? Is it going to cause me years and years of suffering and headache and heartache and pain? Because it could. And this is what the Repair 3 is about, that it is time to mend the damage of relationships. It is time to mend the damage of relationship abuse. It is time to mend the damage of relationship confusion. It is time to mend the damage of relationship hurt. We don't want to be someone that is bitter on the inside and cannot forgive, and allowing the roots of bitterness to just constantly grow in our spirit, to just constantly grow in our hearts, and we're not able to move on. We need to be able to come together and understand why we do what we do, how we get involved, what we get involved with, and also the way that we are getting involved with things, people, places, and things. So it is very important to do those self-examinations. So on November 16th, here at 11 East Utica Street, and that is Buffalo, New York 14209 at the Business Center. We want you to come out so that you can hear the conclusion of the matter and you can hear more about relationships. Again, we have those coming in explaining to you and talking to you about relationship from the mental health perspective. We have someone coming to you from the family perspective and how damaging relationships that can happen and how to heal the family. family. And we even have somebody coming to you from the spiritual perspective of family to hear what thus saith the Lord about relationships. And last but not least, we have a young man, Bishop Marcus Hill, that is coming, and he's going to talk to us from a man's perspective. A lot of times we think we got it all licked, ladies. We think we got it all right, and we know, but we can stand to hear how they feel about things and why they operate, how they operate can help us to connect the dots and put it all together so our relationships can no longer be one-sided. So I invite you out on November 16th. From 1 to 5 at 11 East Utica, and you want to reserve your spot by texting 716-308-5015 to the Repair 3 and your name to reserve your spot. So I just want to encourage you on today that when you are making choices and you are making decisions that is involving relationships, understand and pay attention to the way that you enter a relationship, and also the ones that you are connected to and how you are connected in a relationship. You do not want to lose connection. You do not want a weak connection, because how you start is how you begin. You want a strong foundation, you want clarity, and you want understanding before entering into a relationship, and you want a healed heart, and you want a focused mind so that you can have enough understanding to know what you are getting involved in. This has been Dr. Lovely of the Lovely Lady Magazine, and Straight from the Couch with Dr. Lovely on WDAP Radio. And I thank you for listening in, and tune in again real soon. We'll be back at you again with the Repair series, with the continuation of the Repair. You have a good day.
Straight from the couch, y'all. Come on. Straight from the couch. Dr. Lovely, straight from the couch, y'all. Straight from